Hey there, we're continuing the Risky Business series, and you don't want to miss my next guest, Lee-ann Cordingley, who is a certified sex coach. Yep, I'm bringing sex to wellness because we need to bring ourselves back to be able to understand what intimacy, self-care, all of that feels like, so that way we can bring that part forward into our relationships. So check it out, and I will see you
Welcome,
there.
new and true friends, back to Risky Business series. And really, I'm bringing forward Risky Business because even my business, Living with Intention, has given me permission to embrace my risky business by providing new and provocative ways to expand past traditional wellness. Sure, it is important to eat healthy and exercise for the body wellness, but here I want to expand past that, right? Because it's more about your emotional, your mental, and your, somatic, your body health. And as humans, we tend to deny ourselves those simple pleasures due to distractions or even our own self-judgment of being intimate with ourselves. So we can invite intimacy into our lives as we build compassion and understanding of our own needs, which really helps us to alleviate the pressure and the expectations we tend to put on ourselves. So you might be wondering, April, where are you going with this? How do we approach this risky business of intimacy? And this is why I'm bringing forward an amazing guest here today, Lee-ann Cordingley. And she's here to offer support to uncover possible challenges we face in the risky business of intimacy so we can be more open with ourselves and others. And just a little bit about Lee-ann before we begin. She is a certified sex coach, a yoga teacher, and a woman's circle host, and is passionate about the power of healthy sexual expression for physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And Lee-ann is a fierce cheerleader in pursuit of people's sexual pleasure goals and uses a variety of different modalities, including sexology, embodiment, yoga, and mindfulness. That's why I reached out to her, is because I saw that she embodied like a holistic approach to not just sex, but intimacy with ourselves. And she works across the UK and Nottingham to, offer support in coaching sessions, group workshops, and she does guest speaking with companies and schools. So without further ado, I'm here to introduce Lee-ann. It's truly a pleasure to have you here with us today, Lee-ann. Thank you.
Thanks, April. It's really nice to be here. So thank you for the invitation. Really lovely
Mm,
to be here.
yes. And as we're talking about the risky business, there's like twofold to this. The riskiness of your own business, right? Being out there advocating, talking about sexuality, um, you know, body shaming, all those things and intimacy. That's pretty risky, to do that. And also people risking, it is risky business, right? Risking to be more intimate with ourselves. In our society, Western culture, it seems like we're so attracted to external, to what other people are doing, to how they look or how to behave or perform in certain ways in order to be intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there can be a shaming, and like you say, April, lots of people do look outside for external intimacy, but the where it has to start from within, doesn't it? Everything starts within. In my background as a yoga teacher, we talk about the universe. We're all part of the universe, but the universe is all part of us as well. So when we talk about intimacy, We can't have one without the other, really. So yeah, and that's primarily what I do. I help people get in touch with what it means for them to be a sexual being.
Yeah. And that can be a little challenging for someone to even approach you, right? To be a little bit vulnerable and to seek somebody that they can trust and they can be open to connecting with.
Absolutely. And that's the fact. Honestly, it's the first thing that I always say to any of my clients. I always start my process with, an introductory call just to make sure I'm the right person, I'm the best person to serve them. But the first thing that I always say to all of them is, it's a really bold thing that you're doing. Some people talk about sex quite easily. A lot of us don't. So for somebody to approach me, a stranger, just because they've seen me on the internet or on social media or something like that, is a really big thing. And they do trust me with a lot of clearly very intimate things. But it's not just clients. I find that whenever I'm having conversations with people, and perhaps you have the same thing, that people, I imagine, probably open up to you quite a lot as well. You have a really lovely healing kind of natural energy around you. So I imagine that happens for you as well.
Yes.
People finding that ability to open up and talk to people, because you can't do it with everybody, can you?
No, and really it's about the person wanting, right? They want more for themselves and feeling that stuckness, or that I want this, but am I worthy? I think that's what comes into it. It's the worthiness to receive.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of everybody, perhaps, I am using a generalization here, everybody thinking, am I weird? I find this sexually appealing, or I find this practice really interesting, or a huge turn on or something. Does this make me weird? And everybody wants to know that they're not weird. And for the most part, people aren't weird. We're just people.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own unique sexual identity, their own unique sexual expression, their own levels of turn on, what they find interesting and what they find not interesting. Everybody is so very, very unique. So that's a big part of what I do as well. So it's not just the trusting other people, and full circle to how we began our conversation, trusting themselves and learning themselves that they are perfectly and perfect exactly the way that they are, and without holding themselves to these external standards, I suppose you might say, or societal standards.
Yeah, and I think that really, it affects our mental health too. So when we can understand, that, as you perfectly said, that we're not weird, we're just human, and this is what feels good to us or feels good to them, and then how to just approach it, and really maybe even, would you say, accept that part of themselves.
I would say that, yeah, absolutely. There's a great freeing quality of being able to not just sexually, but being able to accept yourself as you are. And I think that everybody will have a challenge with that at some point or another. Even from judging other people, we judge ourselves, don't we? If there's a quality that you're being judgmental about another person, it's generally mirroring what is it that you judge of yourself. So that's quite a big deal, having people accept themselves. And when my clients approach me to talk to me about their deepest, darkest secrets, they being able to voice those things and to not be rebuffed or rejected or have a finger pointing, you're so weird, you're so weird. It is a level of acceptance, and it is a very, very permission giving thing for somebody to be able to talk about their sexual desires or sexual needs or experiences with another human being in a non-judgmental way, and in a whole person-centered way as well. Like you say, it's not just a physical. Intimacy isn't just a physical. So I work with the Dr. Patty Britton's MEBS model, which is mind, emotions, body, energy, spirit. So we are not just one of those things. We are a whole being. And
say that again.
Mind, emotion, body, energy, spirit. That's not my model. That's the model of Dr. Patty Britton, who I've studied with.
And so my question then it brings to mind is, and what is that separation? What gets in the way? Why are we so, it's so taboo to be intimate with ourselves, to even have this conversation about sex and intimacy? People just tend to shy away or say that's not me, or, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. When really most likely they're not.
Mm. I think perhaps, I mean, this is just my own theory, that I think we're all a little bit frightened of rejection, of that being ostracized for something, and maybe it goes back, cavemen times. If we're rejected or ostracized from a group, solitude and loneliness can result in demise. So maybe it stems from that. Maybe it's a really primal thing that we don't want to feel rejected. We need to be accepted. So yeah, maybe that's a fear. We do have this idea of what might be accepted in terms of sex. What is the norm? What is the normal way that people have sex? Well, clearly there's only one way of having sex, and that's in a heterosexual monogamous relationship. And but that obviously we know that's not true. There are lots of relationship dynamics. There are lots and lots of ways of expressing yourself sexually. But as soon as we take it outside of that kind of cookie cutter mold, we perhaps might feel like it's a little bit, going back to that word weird, a little bit out of the ordinary. People who engage in perhaps the non-vanilla practices like kink, or things that are just ever so slightly outside of that, they most certainly might feel like it feels a bit strange and it's kind of a little bit underground.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the narrative is changing on that now. I think that we are becoming a lot more vocal about what it means to be a person, and maybe that's my periphery of society in general, because it's on my radar now. But I think that people are actually being a lot more vocal about what is socially acceptable and what is not.
Yeah, and just being willing to go outside that box, even. Yeah. And
the willingness to be different as well.
Mm-hmm. And to see themselves as different, and it's okay.
I think anybody is free to express themselves. And in fact, the World Health Association, or the World Association for Sexual Health, deems sexual pleasure to be a key component of sexual wellness. So it's not just being free of STIs and being physically well in their body, but pleasure is actually listed in their manifesto as being a component of wellness.
Oh, let's go a little deeper with that.
Yeah. So can a person truly be holistically well if they are feeling like they're hiding some part of themselves or are ashamed of some part of themselves? And typically we can see that sex can be a big shame driver. It seems to me to be that pleasure and shame tend to kind of be hand holders. They kind of tend to walk the same path. And even towards the simple pleasures, I speak this quite a lot with some of my clients and my group workshops, that a lot of times we can almost deny ourselves pleasures because we haven't earned them. And so the example I give would be, I really want to sit down and have a cup of tea, read my book, but I can't because I need to wash the dishes. As soon as I've washed the dishes, I have therefore earned the right for this simple pleasure. And let's face it, the housework is never finished. It's always in a cycle, right? It's always in a cycle. So it's not, I talk to people not just about sexual pleasures, I'm talking about pleasure. Because if you can't recognize simple pleasures, it makes it a little bit more difficult to recognize sexual pleasures or sexual turn-on.
Yeah. What would those simple pleasures? Yeah. What would those simple pleasures look like? Is it sitting down and having that tea and or taking a warm bath, or like self-care type of things?
Yeah, it might be taking yourself off for a long bicycle ride, or I don't know, taking a walk around the zoo, or going to the beach, or something like that. All of my things tend to revolve around nature. But
me too.
Those, yeah. But those simple things that we kind of, I don't know, it's nice. It's nice to have that carrot dangling in front of you. Oh, I'm going to do this task that I'm not particularly looking forward to doing, but I know there's something nice at the end of it. But I think it becomes a problem when we stop recognizing that we're kind of denying ourselves those pleasures because we're on the hustle, we're on the grind, and there isn't time for the pleasures because we've got the vacuum needs to go around, or we need to, I don't know, other boring chores. I don't know.
Yes, laundry. There's always laundry.
Laundry's a fun one, isn't it? Again, never ending. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the magic porridge pot, but my laundry basket is like the magic porridge pot.
Just keeps coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, bubbling up from the bottom.
Oh, well, I think you also hit on a really good point too, about earning the right to have the pleasure, indulge in something that brings us into that space where we can receive like a little bit more of ourselves, right? And as we talked in the beginning, it's like it's the worthy. Are we worthy of it? Maybe even. It reminds me of your Cinderella, right?
Yeah.
She had all these tasks to do, and she got them all done and more, and yet she still was denied to go to the ball. Thank God for the fairy godmother,
Right.
who was able to make the magic happen. But still, that's sometimes I feel that way. Cinderella, just things going and going and going, and then before I know it, the day's end, and it's like, well, that went out the window. Maybe tomorrow or maybe next week. So when will that happen too?
Yeah, I think I mean it's a whole bigger conversation, isn't it, around that? But I like to, especially with my clients and with myself, if I find myself with a busy brain and a large task list, I try and set myself 3 things to do, during my day. Something I should do, something I could do, and something I want to do. And there's not really any priority in those things, but I think I'm probably more motivated to do the should first, and then it's out of the way. But I really like that analogy that the fairy godmother in Cinderella, we can be our own fairy godmother, because actually the only person who is going to carve out time for your pleasure is you. You're the only person who can do that. Other people who love you will want to support you or do things for you to make you happy or because they love you. But ultimately, you are responsible for your own pleasure. So therefore, we must carve that out for ourselves and prioritize it for ourselves, because nobody else is going to do that. Not because they're mean or they're horrible. It's because they're responsible for their own happiness.
Yes. Yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly. And then it just seems like, when we're distracted with so many things, then, that just kind of pushes us away from our own um, time frame to have that space to, be with ourselves. And I think in that intimate setting, right, that's when reflection comes in. That's when we can relax, and, really start enjoying ourselves more.
yeah, and there are so many ways that we can do it. These simple pleasures. Even um, I'm a big fan of just being on my yoga mat or my meditation seat and just quiet. But then that's just, I'm also a big fan of going out with my high heels and lip gloss and dancing the night away. So I have to carve out those times for myself. No one's going to say to me, Lee-ann, go and sit on your yoga mat. Go and, you know, go and sit in a dark room with a candle burning. That no one's going to do that. So I do think it's really important. And that does come down to sex as well. We can nobody's going to be responsible for our sexual pleasure. Has to be us. And obviously we are talking, everything always consensual and everything like that goes without saying, but nobody else is responsible for our sexual pleasure. We are.
Yes. Do you think that there's a gender a little bit more challenging for women than men, or do you think that's a stigma?
Um, I'm unsure. I mean, my own experience. I've lived experience of a woman. I know that I'm also a mother, and so I tend to my children before tending to myself. And I don't know how much of that is in our biology or how much of that is in our socialization. It does seem to be that women would typically take that role. That does seem to be, but then I do know men that take that role too. So it's kind of a bit of a dodgy ground, isn't it, to stereotype based on gender? But I think women perhaps might naturally be the caring. The women's bodies are designed to carry the babies, the more kind of caregiving role. But I'm unsure. I can only talk from my own personal
Yes. Yes.
experience of that. But I have had clients of both male and female genders who would describe this to me. Male clients who don't take the time for themselves just as much as sometimes women don't take the time for themselves. So I think, and there's the other kind of school of thought on it, that women could perhaps be more vocal about not having the time. Men might actually keep that inside.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd never want to be a woman basher. I'd never want to be a man basher or anything in
Yeah.
between.
But it's just really us about, for our own needs, right? Intimacy or sexually or whatever that is, being able to express what our needs are in a healthy way.
Yes.
The blowing up and, blaming others for, our own situation, that's not helpful. But to be able to sit down with your partner or whomever it is and to talk about it in a healthy way, so that way they can hear your needs and you can listen for theirs too. It's not a one-sided conversation. That's what I've learned in my decades of marriage. It's just not one-sided. It's listening.
Absolutely.
Listening goes both ways, and holding space for that person. And that's intimacy in itself too. Being able to listen deeply and really hear the other person and what they're expressing their needs, and then understanding that we only know what we know, right? We have our minds, and it tells us little stories about that person that we see every day. All the stories, but until they can talk and share, then we really don't know. So I believe
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
intimacy in itself too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always think that, we are with our thoughts all of the time. And if you know something well enough to verbalize it, it's there. It's an idea that's kind of like spinning around and it's been marinating in there. And as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're not learning anything. Whereas if somebody else is able to verbalize what's going on around in their mind, we're going to learn. And that's probably the reason we have one mouth and two ears. So all the more for listening with. So, I mean, I say this to people that I'm coaching with in relationships, that when they ask me, well, what's the biggest thing about having good sex with your partner? It is communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's talking, it's communicating, it's being able to say what you like, also being able to say what you don't like. Knowing the power of your no's as well as the power of your yeses, and being able to, like you say, hold space for your partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it becomes a more pleasurable experience, because because that's what we want to do, I hope, in most healthy relationships. We want to come together and have that really real connection. And when you can talk about it and be with that person in that moment and explore together, that's when, the relationship really blossoms and that intimacy really comes into play as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I so appreciate you being here, Lee-ann. I mean, this time went by really fast.
It really has, isn't it? It's really gone by
all
fast.
things that we've talked about. So good. And I know that your website, because I do my research, right? When I invite people to come on, I look at what they're talking about. I connect with them as we did, personally, and then I do my research. So you have some really good resources on your website. I love it so much.
Thank you.
And so those who want to connect with you, or, just take a peek at your website, where can they find you? What is the website address?
It's my name. It's Lee-ann, L-E-E-A-N-N, Cordingly, Cordingley.co.uk. Nice and simple. And all my social handles are that as well, Lee-ann Cordingley. So I try to make it as easy as possible for people to find me, but I do get quite vocal on LinkedIn and Instagram and things like that.
I love it though. You get really spicy. You get spicy on there too.
I get as spicy as I possibly can without getting kicked out.
Have you ever been kicked out yet?
Not from LinkedIn yet,
okay.
But I've been shadow banned on Instagram before, which is
that's okay, because that means you're pushing boundaries.
Yes,
and that's what we need. And
that's
what other things do you have coming up for people? Do you have any workshops coming up, or any live online events, or anything like that for people to get like a little taste?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I know you and I have also connected on a LinkedIn Live, so I have another one of those coming up at the end of the month with Dina. I have a women's circle coming back to the surface very soon as well. That's not quite launched yet, but that will be coming soon. And other than that, it's in-person events in Nottingham, but obviously we are a long way away, and I'm not entirely sure where your audience are sitting right now. You never know, but I am in Nottingham, so I host events over in Nottingham as well.
Great. And they can find all that information either on LinkedIn, and is that right? Lee-ann Cordingley on LinkedIn, right? That's
right.
Handle? Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay. Right.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect, Lee-ann.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming out and co-creating with me today.
Thank you.
And sharing your risky business. And I'm hoping that those of you listening or watching are willing to take the risks to become more intimate, with yourself. Give yourself a little bit more space. those self-indulgences are so important, as Lee-ann shared, and then bringing that forward with your relationships. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, please hit like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let Lee-ann know what you enjoyed hearing here today. And also, I want to know how you are risking in your business or in your personal life. So until next time, my friends, be well.
Thank you.